Fordwich is the port for Canterbury. At one time, back in Roman times and up to the Middle Ages, Fordwich was on an arm of the sea, and ships would come from the continent and bring goods to Fordwich to be unloaded. They couldn't get any further up the river because there were shallows, and the boats had to unload in Fordwich and the goods taken by cart to Canterbury. It became so important that it became a limb of Sandwich, which is one of the sink ports.
35 years ago, my mother and father lived in the village, town, mustn't call it a village, it's a town, smallest town in England. My mother was taken ill and my father asked me if I would come home and care for her. I found myself with no job, and my father and I used to come in here for the odd drink now and again, and the couple that were running the pub asked me if I would like a job working in the Fordwich Arms. So 35 years ago, I was a barmaid here in the Fordwich Arms, and in fact, this is where I met Sean. And then we decided that we wanted to get our own pub, take on our own lease, and at that time, the Fordwich Arms lease came on the market. So we applied for it and got it, and that was 22 and a half years ago, and that's how I ended up back in the Fordwich Arms.
I moved into Fordwich in 1982, into Brooklands Close. My children were quite young at the time, and Sue O'Donnell, now married to Sean, used to come and babysit for me, and her parents lived in Brooklands Close, and so that created a very good feeling with all of us. Eventually, my daughter worked with Sue and Sean in the Fordwich Arms. It's a very close community, and mainly it's a great group of villagers. Well, we're not a village, but we're townsfolk, and we love it.
They say in every good town is a good pub and a church, and obviously we have both, with the addition of our lovely 16th century town hall.
Here is the town hall. It was built in 1544, and upstairs here where we are now was the meeting room, but also the courtroom. In the courtroom we have the bar, and the prisoner would stand at the bar with a constable on each side of him, and that's why your barristers are called to the bar and why they're called barristers. Punishments could be various, up to having time in prison, up to a year and a day in prison, which is downstairs underneath the courtroom. It takes 3 people, there's a bed in there, and it has 3 people. They could be there up to a year and a day. There's an exercise yard at the back of the town hall where they were allowed to exercise sometimes, but they were just fed bread and water and lived their time in the jail. Very serious crimes could be punishable by death. Each of the Cinque Ports had their own method of killing people, capital punishment. In Sandwich, they buried them in the ground in the gaze and salts, with their hair sticking out of the ground to make sure they were still there. In Fordwich, they were drowned in the thieves' well, and the accuser had to push the accused under the water until he were drowned. If you were a bit of a scolding woman, you could be in trouble because you would be perhaps put in the ducking chair and ducked in the river, made a ridicule.
The point about punishments like the ducking stool, similar to the stocks, is that it's a sort of community regulation. It's a way for the community to regulate and police the behaviour of those who seem to be stepping out of line. So with the ducking stool, if you're seen as a scold, if you're seen as a nagging wife, then going into the ducking stool will be an occasion that everybody will gather round and watch and cheer as you go into the water.
The ducking pool was it's all for scolding women and also witches. And I think I'm not sure how many men were in there, but certainly women were ducked. If they survived, if you look in the town hall, there is a drying room where the sign for the toll. So dried them out. So if they survived, I believe they were killed anyway. And if they didn't survive, that was the punishment that they deserved.
Ducking stools are used more for scolds. They're used for women who speak out of turn, women whose speech is seen to be disorderly or unruly in some way, because it's women's speech that is the problem. It's women's speech that is going to be defined as disorderly and unruly and in need of control, because the ideal for woman is that she should be silent wherever possible and sweetly spoken when she isn't being silent. The scold's bridle, which is a kind of another way of punishing women for disorderly speech, but it does the speech side of it much more directly. The scold's bridle is like a kind of metal cage that sits over your head, and it has a metal strut that goes back into your mouth and holds your tongue down, and then the cage is locked, as a very direct message that your language is out of order.
It was very good to be a woman living in Fordwich. The first thing is that in Fordwich, which is almost unique with the other cinque ports, we had free women, and they had almost equal rights to men.
It sounds more liberated than it is, to be honest. The free woman, so the status of being a free man of a town or a free woman of a town is something that allows you to carry out trade, essentially. It gives you the right to operate in that town with certain economic privileges, with trading privileges, with kinds of entitlements. It might involve an entitlement to have a say in the town governance, in the town council, in the kind of council of guilds who would coordinate and manage trading procedures in the town.
I became a member of town council about 1987. I've done a long stint on town council. I've been mayor and then mayor deputy, and also very involved with the Twinning Association at its beginning. So I think that's probably why I was honoured in that way, and I'm very grateful for town council to give me that honour.
To be a free woman does definitely give you privileges. It gives you certain rights to things that women might not normally be expected to do, like running their own businesses.
I was very honoured to receive the letter from Town Council asking me if I would accept the honour of Free Women of Fordwich. Basically, I'm told that it's given to somebody who goes over and beyond the duties to the town.
I can drive sheep across the bridges, and I can also have fixed bayonets at dawn.
In those days, brewers were many, because widows were allowed to brew beer when their husbands died to support them, because there was no welfare state in those days, so they were brewers. They were called alewives, and each widow would be brewing beer for the town, because people used to drink a lot of beer in those days, perhaps up to a gallon a day each.
Brewing was an important trade for women. It was one of the places where women were most likely to be running the village inns and so on. Being an alewife is a status that does confer some rights. It's also seen as being slightly disreputable because, of course, you're dealing with beer and you're dealing with drunken customers, and you have to be somebody who can manage that sort of situation. So that actually it's interesting to think about that as an example of the ways that the ideal of the woman as silent doesn't really work, because, you know, if you're a woman running a pub, you can't be silent. You need to be able to talk to your customers, you need to be able to sell them beer, you need to be able to get rid of them when they're out of order. So there are certain ways in which women are actually expected to be quite vocal and powerful in the preservation of village order.
And there are a lot of strong women that have been and still are on our town council and make decisions about this town. Perhaps it goes back to the day when nagging wives and scolds were put in the ducking stool and ducked into the river. Perhaps we're just a little bit frightened that may still go on. But no, we have a great community of strong women in Fordwich. One each side, one like that, one like that.
Yeah,
one
they all
like
go like that, don't they?